Ooh, what's up, Internet? My name's Nerdy.
And I'm Clarus.
And this is Full Metal Alchemist. Why are these on?
Just your other headphones beeping. It's fine.
This is Brotherhood episode 39 and 40.
Yes.
I was supposed to say 39 and 50.
Not
wow,
quite.
we're off to a great start.
It's not how math works.
I'm just, you know what? We're off to a rough start because I'm so excited. Because I'm loving this show right now, and I just can't wait to watch more of it.
Yeah, you know what? I love that.
You know, this has been an up and down road for me. Mostly up. A couple instances of down.
Sure.
And much like a wooden roller coaster, it had a bit of a slow, bumpy start. But much like a wooden roller coaster, once it got momentum, that momentum's been pretty fantastic. There were a few turns where, it's old. It's an old wooden coaster. And the seat's a little small for me. I am 6'4". Mm-hmm. And so the turn, it was a little jerky, wasn't my favorite. Mm-hmm. But the momentum is fantastic. It's like being alive, a feeling I don't have very often, as I am actually a revivified corpse that is trying to find his way in the world. I don't have a social security number. If anyone can help me with that, I would greatly appreciate it. And so we're here at episode 39 of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and I'm just having a great time.
We don't have security numbers.
I know, but the majority of our audience is American, and so if I said social insurance number, they would just be... We don't confuse the Americans. All right? We're trying to make this as easy for them as possible.
Yeah.
If
we
you
actually
want
got together because I cast Speak with Dead, and I was like, oh, I can understand what you're saying now.
Yeah, but she's never asked me a fifth question, so I'm able to stay alive. If you want the full reaction, go to patreon.com/nerdynightly. But if you don't stay here, because you're already here, and if you sat through that 90-second intro, you're probably going to watch the video.
Probably.
Oh my god, are we done with the rap? Whoa.
I guess.
For a second there, I am dyslexic,
yeah,
and I was like, they spelled that wrong. No, I'm dyslexic. Oh yeah, we're not rapping anymore. Mm-hmm. We're back to like emotional boy time. What the fuck? Yeah, this is the most angsty opening yet. Oh my god, it's 90s Superman. Ooh. This is a fun little tease for what's coming up.
Right?
Some people might say that it's spoilery, but this just feels teasy.
Yeah.
Hohenheim's actually going to do something?
I feel like sometimes definitely like intros can be spoilery, but this one just feels like a vibe.
Yeah, and like none of it's surprising. They're going to fight Pride. The Drachman tanks are going to fight Sloth.
Yeah.
Like those seem super expected.
Yeah, for sure.
Your arm. You'll die if we don't bandage
Winry's
it.
the best.
Winry?
Quiet, Ed.
Honestly, Ed doesn't deserve her.
Didn't I promise that the next time I cried, they would be tears of joy?
At our wedding.
Not yet.
Episode 45. They move quick. Mm-hmm. Like us.
I still want to beat you bloody and drag you down to the Rockbell family grave to pay your respects.
But I need you to run away with her so that she can be safe while I try and figure that. Yeah.
And they can't use her against him.
Mm-hmm.
I heard all about it from General Armstrong. We know something's about to happen that will affect all of Amestris and its people.
Shit.
We need to know what the notes say.
They're a team.
These people actually communicate.
I heard they're using the Rockbell girl as a hostage against you.
You glad you got your flashback?
This guy was literally told everything.
You'll have to wait a while before we can punish your parents' killer.
Fine.
I forgot about those two.
Forgot about these two freaks of nature.
Look at these bodies. What kind of future can we have? If you're gonna kill us, do it!
Oh god, that's dark.
But as soon as we got these bodies, they were all told that we were dead. And to them, we are.
Don't you want to see them again?
This shit's wild. Can't you change at will?
No, how could we be? Of course we want our true bodies back!
There's your answer.
I'm so confused.
I don't want to hear a bunch of fatalistic nonsense. Learn whether there's a chance of getting your bodies back.
Everyone needs an owl.
Right? Seriously. I'm very confused how they function now. Because it seemed like they were like, let's change! Morphin time!
I don't.
Why don't we just go into the underground tunnels?
Huh?
Well, What's wrong? I mean, this is a pretty large mine,
This is
right?
why you get the whole flashback about his whole bullshit.
With the mining. Yeah.
That's it! Hey, give me some credit. This is what I did for a living.
If you watch the 2003 anime.
I totally forgot that was a thing, and then they made a thing of it in this. Yeah. That was so silly.
Can accompany us to the fort, of course. But when word gets out that she's missing...
I feel like Winry was not drawn as being as stacked as she is now until she put the winter jacket on. And now she's very boobalicious in that jacket in a way that she never was in like a tank top.
It's all that extra padding. Those winter jackets, man. She's also...
It doesn't bug me because it's not like they're like ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just that it seems like she's like gone up 2 cup sizes because of her coat. I feel like this whole episode too is just them talking about something we already understand has happened.
Yeah, you wanted the flashback. That's the one thing
I
you
thought it
asked
would be
for.
a lot shorter than this.
Well, it's pretty complicated.
It really... I mean, the Warthog people made it complicated, but...
I can see Kimberly's forces now.
I thought that this would be more about Winry's relationship. She gets over that real quick.
Well, for the moment.
Yeah.
I keep my promises.
One way or the other, we're dead. Besides, we don't want to give up either.
Al got a victory too. They are still walking to this building. We have Scar. Come as slowly as you possibly can.
Ed, you hang on to these for me. I'll see you back at the fort.
What?
Kimberly's gonna figure this all out because of those earrings, isn't she?
Yes, Miles here.
What'd you say?
It's amazing their phones work in the phone.
Yeah.
They did their duty without any regard to themselves.
I don't forgive your wanton murdering!
Oh, Scar, dude. I'm sorry, man.
Lousy drunk, your own son couldn't stand to be around you for more than 5 minutes. And you really think you'll be able to face him now?
These two really get a lot of exposition here. Are those not their bodies?
Well, they're like monsters because they're like not fully human anymore, right?
It's possible these notes contain what you're looking for, a humane secret to immortality. Let's hurry to the fort and figure out what they say.
Have they established why he needs to be immortal?
No.
Okay.
A commander handpicked by Bradley will be posted in her place. If they're not careful, they're bound to fall into the enemy's clutches.
It's getting bad.
Mm-hmm.
The clutches of villainy enclose upon our heroes.
Mm-hmm.
There is a way. Listen. Send someone who doesn't have a body. That storm won't freeze me to death. I can't see anything at all!
What the fuck? Did he just stumble into hell?
What was that? Was it my body?
Alphonse Elric. Edward Elric.
I thought that was like a narrator.
Full Metal Alchemist.
That leaves one more.
Interesting. Like, kind of a talky episode, but there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on here that I'm really liking. There's a couple of, like, weird moments. Like, I think that, like, Ed going up to Kimberly at the beginning and be like, why is Winry here? When they rode the car together? Like, what do you knew she was here.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, he's acting like a kid, right? He's like 15.
Okay, fair, yeah.
Right? You let her come along. Why is she here? Like, right? Because she kind of like shoved her way into the car.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Yeah. It was just a weird set of dialogue. This episode had a couple of weird dialogue moments like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that, like, we want our original bodies back was really weird dialogue. I think that the idea of it could have been phrased better, is all. Because I think saying we want our bodies back when they... And then they, like, transform back into what I just assumed they looked like before. I didn't realize those were not their bodies.
Well, no, I think they are. They're, like, fused with, like, a monster,
But they're not fused with anything. They can transform.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the same as the chimeras that we saw before.
No.
The chimeras that we saw before were literally, like, half and half.
Mm-hmm.
This is, like, you have a superpower.
Yeah.
So the language of, like, I want our old body back is that just doesn't make sense to me. Because, like, establish that there's, like, a ticking clock, or there's a downside, or that, like, they have to be in that other form a certain amount of time a day, or just something to make it, like, a full-on negative. Because, like, I can transform into a toad man sometimes under my control, right? Isn't that bad. Just don't transform in front of people.
I think there's, like, a lot of people who would disagree. It's like the werewolf trope that you see. You know, like the werewolves who can, like, transform at will. It's like they have to learn to, like, it's a metaphor for, like, embracing that, like, part of themselves, and it's a part that they, like, reject and, like, they hate, right? If you, like, if it wasn't, like, a toad man, but there was, like, something about yourself that you, like, felt immense shame about, or that you hated.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you were, like, if you were a very judgmental person or whatever it was, and you, like, hated that part of yourself, that, like, negative emotions tend to be stronger than positive ones, depending on the kind of person you are, and especially if they're, like, consistent and, like, pressing. And so, like, they were taken against their will and experimented on and made into these things that, like, yeah, can, like, transform into these monsters, but, like, they didn't want that. Their families were told that they were dead. It's like a shitty burden to have to bear without the choice of it. Like, there's that like element of, like, self-loathing when it's not, like, just your body, like, and you don't have that, like, it's not when it's not you anymore.
I understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I think the language of we want our original bodies back is confusing in that, because they still have their original bodies.
I think it
like,
was
the
used
issue
to relate
isn't...
to Al a little bit better, so that Al has that moment with them.
Yes. And it's fine in that scene a little bit. It's a little confusing. But then the next time we see them, they're in their original bodies, and they're saying we want our original bodies back, which implies to me, as someone who doesn't know where this goes, that those are not their original bodies either. And I think that they are. And I think that it is like a clunky use of language to get that moment where they relate to Al, but that isn't a good one-to-one for the situation that they are in.
Right.
Because of the fact that, like, if they can control it, which it seems like they do, right? It doesn't seem random, or it doesn't seem like someone else makes it happen.
Mm-hmm.
They go, we need to change. We changed. Just don't change. Like, if you have control over it, and the problem is that you don't want to turn ever again, and you have control, that's not as big of a problem. Mm-hmm. So, like, give me conflict. Give me a reason why it is a problem for them to have this power, not just, like, we want our bodies back that we kind of have when we want to have them. Like, that to me is just, it's too convoluted. Just simplify that down, and it doesn't need to be that confusing for characters that I don't think are going to be that important. But it kind of takes over this episode in a weird way for me, where I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what does it mean for you to get your original body back? Does it mean to not have this power anymore? Maybe, but that's not to me it doesn't matter. I just found that weird, and, like, it just did not make sense to me.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think that a lot of the character stuff here is really smart. It went on a little long, I think, in the first half, but, like, I think that it's really smart. I think the way that Winry and Scar interacted was really interesting. I love the use of wanton. It's such a good word, and I love that they drew the parallel between her saying it to his sensei person saying it, and the way in which they mean it so differently, and yet the two different meanings and uses of the word are tying together to affect Scar in the same way.
Yeah.
And leading Scar on this path of, like, really intellectual redemption that I think is an empathetic redemption that I think is so fascinating. And I think as we move forward, we're going to get into his, like, physical redemption and his actual like the actions that redeem him.
Mm-hmm.
But the show is going out of its way to make sure that we understand how he changes internally first before he gets to have those external victories.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that that's just really strong. Instead of like letting him have like the big moment and Winry's like, "Oh, you saved me. Thank you so much." She's like, "Yeah, save me. You have to, but that's not enough." And understanding that and understanding the path to forgiveness for him is long and arduous and involves internal and external changes is so smart. And it's really good writing. And I love Scar as a character. He's truly like one of the most interesting anti-hero characters I've seen in a long time. And I think he's just so well handled.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's definitely one of the strongest parts of the show. Because like we talked about this a lot last week, so I don't want to repeat myself. But like his arc and our feelings regarding him throughout the show have just been like it's been such a journey that I love it.
Yeah, it's so good. I also like the shit with Al at the end was really crazy. And it's so fun, you know. I think that like giving Ed the moment where he sees Al through the door is nice, and like it tells the story and it gets to Ed's emotional heart, but Al can't really move forward as a character right now. He's a little bit constrained. He can't develop deeper relationships with anybody. The only person, the only relationship that he can really develop that changes who he is right now is with his body. And I think that like allowing him to start seeing that and really pushing him on the journey towards that at this point in the story with 2/3 of the way through, we kind of have like one final third, like this last arc to kind of bring it all home. You need Al to start interacting with the idea of what that homecoming is going to be for him and like really motivating him to step it up.
Yeah.
And this just came at the perfect time. You know, there's this low where Armstrong has been deposed from Briggs. It seems like there's not a lot of ways out of the north for them. So to shove all of this darkness among the white of the snow, but hold a candle in the middle of that darkness is a really fun way to do the like all is lost kind of narrative moment from writing school. But you know, it's always more fun to have the all is lost for almost everybody except for the one character who needs the candle the most. And I think that like this is just really like textbook kind of that storytelling and transitioning into the final arc.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's we're headed there, right? Like we have the notes, we have the thing, we have the pieces together. It's really just when does Mustang show up and how does he kind of free up the north for them so that they can make a move on Central. It's going to be an interesting kind of push to the end. We have to watch one more this episode.
Yes.
Oh, let's get into it. Sorry, that was a long mid thing.
Nah, it's good.
Something to do with General Raven's disappearance?
It seems so. However, she's too smart to leave any evidence behind.
Other than murdering him in public in front of like 40 people.
Yeah, but our people are loyal.
As for the General, well, I'm sure the Tigers in Central will make sure she's taken care of.
Oh, shit. Okay, I guess she's just already there.
People travel real fast.
We're getting into some Game of Thrones Season 7, Season 8 time travel here.
No, it's solely based on merit.
That's rich coming from you.
God, they need to just fuck.
I think Hawkeye might be upset.
Nah, she'd join in.
Be hot.
I hope you know I could eat you into bankruptcy.
Maybe we should skip dinner then.
I see.
Skip? Oh.
Maybe I could offer some flowers instead.
That was some well-handled spycraft by you. Well done. Very well done.
They done good.
It can't be good to have someone so talkative on your senior staff.
You have me intrigued, General. What did Raven say?
Immortality.
Ooh, Armstrong came to play!
My soldiers are extremely strong and well-trained, sir. I guarantee they will serve you well, Your Excellency.
I'm sure they will.
Interesting.
That's the Fort Briggs way. From here on, the bears will fight the tigers.
We're headed for civil war, boys!
Fuhrer Bradley works very efficiently, though, so that helps. He isn't a slacker, that's for sure.
Sounds like this is going to be a dull conversation.
I love that, like, the official food of Amestris is hot dogs.
Miles. Buccaneer. Okay.
Is his name Buccaneer? Is that his legal name?
I think so. Why?
I thought it was his title. Like, I thought he was like a Buccaneer.
And Sterling. Salim Bradley is a homunculus.
That's very cool. I love that none of the state alchemists have realized that that is a transmutation circle. I guess they don't have like helicopters. None of them have been up high enough to look down and go, wait a second.
Yeah.
It's all right. Look, over here.
What the fuck?
Can't you at least bring yourself to act a little surprised or something?
Deed it. What's that?
It's when a piece of property is transferred to another person.
Wow, dictionaries in this world are strange.
His name's Webster, actually.
Theophrastus bombastus.
That's too long.
Huh? Oh yeah, you're not that smart. Maybe we shouldn't put too many syllables in it.
The villain of this series' name is Theophrastus Bombastus.
No, he said no.
So von Hohenheim, huh?
Okay.
I think I can remember that.
In that case, you're no different from me, trapped inside this stuffy flask. Let me teach you, von Hohenheim.
Von Hohenheim?
I'll tell you what, von Hohenheim. You can call me the dwarf in the flask, homunculus.
That pride?
We're about to get real anime. Just buckle up.
Oh, okay.
My skill is nothing near yours, master.
Your species can't continue to exist.
Don't call it breeding. And whether or not it's a concept...
Somebody likes that.
I'd hate to be guilty of asking too much, but I think I'd be happy if I could just leave this flask.
This is messed up.
That's enough chatter. Immortality. Tell me, is it possible or isn't it?
Growing impatient in your old age?
That man's nose is a foot long.
Okay, I'll tell you how you can achieve immortality.
Okay, so this was like 400 years ago.
It was a long time ago. Yes.
Longer than 400. I thought Xerxes was destroyed 400 years ago.
Okay, sure, yeah. Numbers.
Jesus Christ.
North Village was attacked.
I heard they all died.
Before it was the West Village.
I love that this thing is as important as it is, and they just let this guy walk around town with it. It's a great shot.
Mm-hmm.
Great way of visualizing what's going on. There's a lot of really cool art in this flashback.
Yes.
I mean, obviously tragedy and...
This is it. Everything is ready?
Yes. You may now become immortal.
He looks like the witches from Ocarina of Time.
All right.
I was trying to think of what his nose reminded me of.
Moment indeed.
It is shocking that they trusted that thing. Okay.
The true center of the transmutation circle is right here where you're standing.
It is?
Surely you remember that your blood is within me. I used it to open the doorway.
Fuck. That is an incredible visual.
Yeah.
What creative design. Holy shit. I mean, horrifying, but like,
yeah,
in such a like perfect way. Wow.
Willard. Mechtild. Reinmeyer.
This isn't funny, but he's just starting with Willard is sending me. Ren's best friend from Footloose?
Yeah.
What's going on here? What is this? What have you done?
To thank you for your blood.
I've given you a name, and I've given you knowledge. And now, I've given you a body that will live forever.
Oh, jeez.
You hear them, don't you? The voices of all the people in this country who were offered in exchange for your immortality.
What the fuck is this show?
Finally, I get the chance to meet Ed and Al's father.
And I finally get to meet the one who taught my sons.
Hohenheim was literally a fucking slave that was manipulated by a fucking god. This show's wild.
My insides were taken. I was trying to bring my child back to life.
I'm sorry.
Oh, shit.
There's no wound.
That's impossible.
Suzumi, you cannot give in to your fate just yet.
Okay, that's not what I thought was happening.
Who am I? I am a philosopher's stone.
24601!
That's what I am.
Very cool.
All right.
I thought he was
Oh, no,
killing
there's
her because he knew that father needed her.
Oh, interesting.
So I thought he was like, it's more important that you die than father's or flask thing, whatever. Dwarf star. Well, it's called the dwarf in the flask, the episode.
Yeah.
And a dwarf star is a star that's.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that like this guy was like a being that was like foamed down to a black whatever, like a
flask.
dense collection of atoms.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel so bad for Hohenheim now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Bebop and Rocksteady are like joining the team, according to the outro. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
Cool shit though.
I knew that was coming up, but I didn't know it was this episode.
Yeah.
And as soon as we flashback, I was like, all right, buckle the fuck up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty fucking wild.
The Philosopher's Stone is known by many names. It's not necessarily
Well, I
a
was like,
stone.
are they introducing a bunch of new stones now?
Besides, to create a Philosopher's Stone that big, you'd have to kill thousands of people.
These post-credit scenes are always so short. And like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like that one was just information we already knew.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, like really, really, really cool concept. I think one of the things that stands out this episode for me in terms of the narrative structure is how much of it was told visually this time. And I think that for anime, you have the potential to do that, right? You have unlimited potential to allow kind of the visual that you are creating to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And I think that the flashback this time used that to such great effect. And it really told the story of the scope in a way that allows the show to feel a little bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the show feels a little small to me because there are so many happenstance people running into each other in cities that are supposed to be very large in a country that's supposed to be very big.
And people get to the next city immediately.
Yeah. And there's like a
agree.
phone call where they're like, general was just taken, and then the general's already there, and you're like, it just sort of like, it shrinks the world.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Having everybody run into each other at the train station at the same time, even though they're all going different directions. And so I think that this flashback did a really wonderful job of expanding the scope of the storytelling and allowing the size of the world to feel a little bit bigger and allow the stakes to get a little bit more intense, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to talk about a world-ending thing happening, but showing the insidious way in which this creature was able to accomplish it the first time and the manipulation of people that allowed for that to happen, showing that it succeeded once allows the audience to just buy in a little more than it could again.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
It takes the training wheels off, which is, something I talk about in Wheel of Time a lot, which is like, it feels like the training wheels are always on that series, right? This series does not have that. Anybody could be taken out next episode, and I would believe it because there are major characters that have died in service of the tension of the world.
Yeah, you were like, oh, Izumi's dead. Like,
well, yeah, and I believe that she could be, right?
Yep.
I believe that that was possible. The way that Barry went out, the way that Hughes went out. Like, this is a series that is not afraid to allow the stakes to be very real consistently.
Yeah,
and I appreciate
sure.
that so much. It's why I'm so enamored with it. And I don't know. I feel like if you watch the reactions, you might think that I speak more negatively on the show and that like I would give it like a 7. I think this is like post like episode 12. I think it's like a 9 out of 10. I think it does have a rocky start, but I think this is like a 9 out of 10 show with some 9.75 moments, right? And a couple of 10 out of 10s, brief moments that are just really perfect. But I do love the show, and I love talking about the things about it that I feel weird about because it is so strong that those things stand out so much. Like, it's really easy to point at, this is a show where I can sit there and be like, this line of dialogue didn't work. And here's why. And I can be that specific because I'm not sitting here going, this plot line doesn't work. Right?
Right. Yeah.
And
you can get specific with this because the show is also specific.
Yeah, and sometimes the alchemy is so specific, and so when like the two characters that are on our screen right now, you guys probably can't see it, although it is still recording. Bebop and Rocksteady are like, when I'm like, I don't understand what they mean by get their old bodies back. I'm surprised by that because in general the way in which magic is discussed in the show is so specific that I have a good idea of what they mean, even if I'm too stupid to understand the like alchemy of it. You know, I'm not a physicist, right? I don't claim to understand the rocket science of the Expanse. But this show often does such a good job that it stands out more. It is kind of the curse of being really good, is that when you like Game of Thrones, we talked about Game of Thrones earlier in this episode. Game of Thrones suffers from this, where I think that season 7 and season 8 are actually like superior to most of the other television shows that came out the year that they came out. I think that the seasons 1 through 4 of Game of Thrones and season 5 especially, I think season 5 is really excellent. I think that those are so good that in comparison, it feels like Game of Thrones season 8 is terrible. But if you put that up against so much of the rest of television that I watched in that year, Game of Thrones season 8 is leaps and bounds ahead of those TV shows, right? It is just in comparison to itself where I think that it falls off. Particularly in like visual design, right? I think the costume design of season 8 of Game of Thrones is the one unimpeachable thing.
Oh, I think the costume design is untouchable throughout that series. Like, truly, like, fucking out of this world.
And so I think that that's kind of what the show is for me, where, like, there are whole episodes that I'm like, I could dissect frame by frame some of these visuals into essays on why they're brilliant. And so I think that I get hung up a little bit on the stuff that doesn't work for me because I think the show is that strong.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, and those 2 episodes that I, 31, 32, I think it was.
Somewhere
where I was like, I don't really like this. And I didn't. And that was honest. And those 2 episodes didn't work for me. And 33, 34 pulled me back in so quickly because that like pristine quality that I expect from the show now was back.
Yeah.
And almost immediately. And it was, it's delightful. Even though the subject matter is hard, you know, they're really not shying away from slavery and genocide and children soldiers and war criminals and all of that stuff.
Big bad themes, and it's
But unlike Attack on Titan, which I felt like had a lot of similar themes, but lacked the interpersonal connection that this show has. Like the relationships between the characters on this show and the hope that they inspire in one another is, I think, what carries it so hard for me personally.
Yep.
And the way in which their relationships have grown and changed, I think is really, really wonderful to watch. There's so much complexity and depth here. And I think that like all of the complexity and depth that I wanted from Reiner in Attack on Titan, I'm getting from Scar in a way that is more, it is just better handled.
Yeah.
And has a little bit more of a real world tinge to me. I buy it here in a way that I never did there.
Yeah.
And not to knock Attack on Titan. I know that people don't want me to do that, but it is the easiest comparison for these 2 shows because there are so many themes that they have in common.
Yeah.
And the magic systems allow for these ridiculous worlds that are sort of based on Germany. You know, they both kind of have like very Germanic influences. Obviously, there's so many hot dogs in Full Metal Alchemist for some reason.
Yeah.
And I just think that like what I wanted from Attack on Titan, I get from this show, and it makes this journey so engrossing to be a part of.
Yeah. I don't know how did you feel about the basically full episode flashback?
I mean, I love flashbacks. There have been a couple in my One Piece reactions recently that are really fantastic. I love flashbacks as a storytelling device. I love filling in the gaps. I think this episode of Flashback was better than last episode of Flashback.
Sure, yeah.
Mostly because that episode started by being very obvious about what was happening, and then flashback to them explaining a bunch of very obvious shit to me that I was like, if you condense this dialogue, I know what's happening.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't think that a child would, but I still feel like it was. I feel like it could have been simpler. Okay. Whereas this episode, I don't. The one thing missing for me, if I'm being honest, in what is otherwise an incredible flashback, is I think that some time could have been spent between the entity and Hohenheim about what the entity wants. And I think that this would have been a good place to drop that. You know, there's 24 episodes left. I still don't really understand what they get out of any of this. And, like, I guess the entity wanted a body. I don't know why it wanted a body.
For autonomy?
But does it need that? Like, does the entity want to have sex?
No, it wants power.
Right. No. And I guess, in my mind, I'm like, once the flask is broken, what happens to you? Right? And why do you need a human body? Why do you want a human body for that? And I think that I think that any sort of conversation between the two of them in that direction would have been nice for me personally. Because the father, I mean, Hohenheim obviously now isn't a villain. But father's motivations are still super strange to me because it does seem like he already has all of the power. And so and now like he is immortal. So what does he get out of any of this? And for me, that is really what makes villains really fascinating. And I also find that I am more interested in watching my heroes push back on a villainous desire that I understand the motivations for, rather than just watching them beat their heads against what is essentially a brick wall of villainy, right?
Just evil for evil's sake.
Yeah, and so I just don't really get what any of the homunculus have wanted this whole time. I don't get what they're like. It gets into like this issue I have with evil in narrative storytelling, which is evil that is destruction. I need to understand what about a world that is destroyed provides that evil entity with value.
Yeah.
And so often it's like, oh, we're going to burn the world to the ground. Okay, but then what? Right? Like, say you succeeded. Why do you know why you want that?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's impossible to get me on board with destruction. I can be there with you. But it seems right now like the homunculuses have control over a world where they can live and do whatever the fuck they want. So like what are you accomplishing by destroying that? You've built up a seat of power where you can you are immortal and can do whatever you want, and you have thousands, millions maybe of citizens who can't not say no to you. Right? You're the military power, you're the magical power, you run everything. So like what do you want out of more?
Do you have any guesses?
I thought it was immortality, but apparently he's already immortal. So I guess like the goal is to be a literal god, but like I don't really know what the value of that is, right? And maybe he like was a god who's been like cast down and he wants to reascend. Like I could see something interesting in that, where like the like smiling guy that Ed sees in the afterlife, who has Ed's arm and leg, whoever that god is, like if that is the dwarfs in the flask, sorry, that's just the title of the episode. If that is his either antithesis or his brother or his the person who replaced him, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. It does seem like he comes from there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
I think that would be like a fair guess.
I think I would just would like that. Or not even his motivations. If we could get into what the other homunculuses get out of all of this. Like, do they have? Because I'm starting to be like, oh, do they not have free will? But Greed did, right? So if
yeah, but Greed also kind of like left.
But that's my point. How is Father convincing the homunculuses to continue to work for him? What is the carrot that he is dangling in front of them to keep them in line if they can leave? That would be really interesting to know, and it would flesh out a villain core that I think right now Sans Lust is the homunculuses are a little flat to me at the moment. Salim's powers are really cool.
Mm-hmm. But we haven't really gotten to know him yet. We barely touched on Pride.
Well, and Wrath now just sits and talks to our heroes and like lets them do whatever the fuck they want, right? And so, and like, who the fuck knows where Envy is? He could be anywhere. They could be anywhere. Gluttony is alive again, maybe. And you know, again, like they're hiding them because that's not what this arc is about. So I don't want people to think that this is a criticism of this arc, which I think has been very strong. And I think Kimberly's actually a very strong villain for it.
Yeah, you just have questions. That's all.
Yeah, and I think that with like 24 episodes left, I just would like to kind of know what our villains, and just what any of them would like. And I don't think I could point at any individual villain other than Kimberly, obviously, who enjoys this. Mm-hmm. I understand him, and that's why it's fun that he's the villain for this arc. But
yeah.
I couldn't point at any other one and say like, what they want. Mm-hmm. And some of them have been in this since episode 1, and so that's just a long time to be like, pride is pride and Fuhrer is Fuhrering. You know?
Yeah, this is I from what I recall, this flashback is kind of the turning point of like focus onto the villains.
And that totally makes sense, right? Like, again, like this isn't a complaint. This is a conversation about what I would like to see.
Oh yeah, no, I'm asking because I'm like, you know, like because I've seen it. I can't like make speculations, but I can prompt them from you. That's all. Like.
Yeah, I think that where I'm coming from right now is that right now I am having a lot of fun with the relationship between Scar and the group, and Kimberly is a great villain right now. In order for this series to turn towards the bigger plot, I think that I would like to know some of the other side's motivations in order to get there.
Sure, yeah.
But right now I'm very happy. I'm fully engrossed in the show, and like you couldn't stop me from watching the rest of it. You know what I mean? I genuinely care about the end of this show in a way that I sometimes struggle with anime. You know what I mean? I think that like sometimes the endings have these like giant sort of like, I don't want to say goofy. It's not goofy, but like they're very out there finales where it gets so big that it stops being relatable to me as a viewer.
Right.
And I think that this show, while it is magical and while there's a lot going on in it, I think that this show has not crossed that barrier to being unrelatable to me.
Right.
And I think that's really impressive considering the scope of the powers at this point. And on a human level, I understand where these characters are coming from in a big way.
Right.
And that to me is very, it's fun. It's really fun and it's really smart. And I could talk about the show I could sit here and talk for hours. I could sit here and talk, all night.
Yeah.
Because I think there's so much here and it really is deep and complex.
Yeah. I'm so excited to watch the original with you too.
Yeah. I can't believe there's 2 different versions. That breaks my brain. And once I've seen both of them, I will never be able to tell them apart.
You will.
No, but like me, in like a year from now, I will never be able to tell you which one's which. They will be interchangeable in my brain.
I really don't think that is possible.
Once you tell me like one thing that happens in one of them, I will remember which is which. But this is how my brain works. You'll literally be like, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, what's the ending? And I'll be like, one of them. Which one is the one with this? You'll be Brotherhood. I'll be like, I can tell you the whole plot.
Right.
But like, yeah, it's just it's how everything gets jumbled up in there. I consume too much content. This was fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry if that was a long-winded conversation. If that was boring, I just there's some really good shit here, and I like talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the show a lot.
Yeah.
There's a reason we have Al art in the hallway.
Yep. No, I love the show.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good shit. If you like this video, like and subscribe to the channel. If you don't, hit the dislike button. Leave mean comments down below because the algorithm god is hungry and we must feed her. This episode, that algorithm goddess is... You usually answer.
I mean, yeah, not a lot of women in this episode.
Oh, in this episode, let's go with Winry. You know,
I guess
she
forgave.
forgave.
Was in the first episode, yeah.
Not fully.
Yeah.
She forgave for some things, but not for the wanton destruction at Singapore Sam's in downtown Calgary. Don't go for dinner. Go at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're drunk. That is the best time to go to Singapore Sam's. It's a party. If you're not from Calgary, you have no idea what I'm talking about.
No.
But if you want to have a good time, but not a long time, go to Singapore Sam's in the middle of the night. If you want to follow us on the internet, you can. I'm at Nerdy Nightly.
I'm at Claris Polaris.
Do something nerdy tonight, y'all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.